And I wanted to do the same thing for him right at the kitchen table by kind of broadcasting those scores to him. But no, I really don't think he really cared about them. He just knew that it was something I enjoyed
Oh,
doing. And
nice.
he was the one who happened to be there listening to it every Sunday morning.
I love. So, what were your parents like? Can you tell me, or what are they like?
So yeah, so my mom just turned 89 actually.
Hmm.
So coming up later on in 2024, my mom will be 90. Lost my dad about 15 years ago, and
Oh,
that
so
still has
sorry.
been thank you. That still has been extremely hard.
Yeah.
That was always, we did a lot together. We went to Eagles games every Sunday for a home game for, oh, I don't know, 15, 16, 17 years. We had season tickets. We would go almost every Sunday to the Eagles games, spend time together doing that. He'd take me to Phillies games. That was very difficult, but he worked a lot. He worked hard. The car business is long hours. I don't know so much about it now as it was back then, but, it was many times 5 or 6 days a week, and he would be home on Sunday, which was great. The car business many years ago, if people remember, they always closed early on Friday nights. So with him, it was usually, Friday night he was home, Sunday he was home, but it was long hours and it was hard work. So but it was great having him when he was home. We always did a lot together, and that was, he always made time for my little league baseball games. He would always make time for that on his dinner hour at work. He would
Wow.
come by. He would leave work, come by, and then watch my games and then go back to work. So he always made time for that, which I was always grateful for. My mom was a teacher. She was a teacher in Philadelphia for many years, and then went to work with my grandmother. The other side of our family actually was in the audio video business. So we had a store, and
Mm.
my grandparents had it all the way back to the 30s and the 40s in Philadelphia. So as my grandmother got older, she retired from teaching. My mom did, and then went to work in the store. But they were always around, which was always good. They were great role models for me.
That's
Uh,
great.
yeah, I kind of took an interesting, a different kind of career path than kind of the rest of my family. They always, what are you taking in college? Communications. What does that mean, right? That was always the
Yeah.
question. Well, what does communications mean? So I constantly had to explain it, and it was a difficult career path, but ultimately it did work out for me.
Were they supportive of that, Brad?
They were. They were very supportive of that. It was an unusual choice. I remember it was so funny when you fill out a college application back then. Many times on the college application, they asked you like, what's your first choice, second choice, third choice for what you want to be. And I vividly remember my first choice was like broadcaster, like communications. My second choice was orthodontist, and I'm not exactly sure, like, I'm not exactly sure like where that came from. And I
Right.
remember my mom said, "Well, don't you want to be an orthodontist first?" And I went, "Well, nah, not really. Too much schooling, medical school. Didn't, I wasn't really wanted to do that." But yeah, that was the odd thing was, yeah, radio broadcaster first, and then, or actually TV. I always wanted to do TV, and then orthodontist second.
Oh my
But yeah,
gosh,
they were
not what I
very
was
supportive.
expecting you to say.
Yeah, that's always the, yeah. I was like, I don't know where that came from, but that was my second choice on the college application.
So, when you said, I tried to leave, but I would always end up back.
Mhm.
Why would you try to leave?
So it can it well, so when I started in radio, so I'm giving away my age here, which is, I don't have a problem doing.
25.
25, yeah, a couple of times over plus. I graduated college in 1982, and graduated from Temple. And the radio business, the communications business, was very much different back then. So the way I tell it is, I could have knocked on almost every radio station door in Philadelphia back then and said, "Do you have a news job open?" And that was the beauty of the business back then. There were far more
I
jobs. Every
see.
station was doing news, and that was the track that I took in college. I kind of went in the direction of broadcast journalism and into news, right? So I kind of gave up the sports and took Joe's advice and kind of went the direction of news. So every station in Philadelphia, and there were many of them back then, they all had news departments. But it was very hard to break into radio back then. It was always the thing. It's not who you know. I'm sorry, it's not what you know, it's who you know, right? That was
Yeah.
always, you needed some sort of a crack in the door, some sort of a
Mm.
break to get you in. And then you had to build on your career from that point. So ultimately I did. My first job was in Trenton, New Jersey. And which that's fine. They tell you in college, you're going to have to go to, some small town in the Midwest to start in radio or television, and then work your way back to a bigger market like Philadelphia or New York or Chicago. But I didn't. Ultimately, I ended up in Trenton, New Jersey, which was nice. I could still live at home. It wasn't that far from where I grew up in Philadelphia, and I could drive there every day. And that's where I started to build my career. And then you get fired for the first time, right? So
Hmm.
so I didn't work a lot before before I started in the radio business. I worked at my grandparents' store all through college.
Oh, I see.
I worked there. Retail was not for me. But it was a great place. I loved seeing my grandmother and my uncle and my cousins every
Oh.
week. So it was great just being in the store and being around their business. That was always fun for me to do. And but then you work and you get fired for the first time, and you wonder what did I
Mm.
do wrong, right? And but ultimately, and I've been very fortunate in this career where for a lot of people they give up on it very early. I stuck with it and managed to turn one job into another job, into a bigger job, into a better job, which is what the whole idea was. I was very proud of the fact that I was never really out of work for an extended length of time in this business. If I lost a job for whatever reason, and I always say that I just wish I would have lost a job because I did something wrong. But for many times, people lose jobs because they're just victims of circumstance.
Right.
Companies downsize, they eliminate jobs, for whatever reason, you lose
Yeah.
it. And it really has nothing to do with your job performance. Many times
So
it just has
true.
to do with the circumstances surrounding what's going on. And that seemed to always be the way it was with me. And I always tell people, one time I just wish I screwed up and I did something wrong, and that's why it happened. But it was always for some other reason. Either they eliminated my job, or they sold the company, or whatever it happened to be. But I kept sticking with it. But every time there was a change, every time there was a glitch where something happened, I would say, you know what? That's it. I'm done. Right? I'm not doing it
Mm.
anymore. When I got beyond 15 years, that was way longer than I ever thought I would spend in the radio business.
Huh.
And it just kept going and going. And as I tried to get out, somebody would always call me and go, I hear you're looking for a job. I've got
Ah,
something you might be interested in. And I would never say no. I would never say, you know what? I don't think so. I think I'm finished. I'm going to go in a different direction. Because frankly, I didn't know what direction I was going to go in. Right.
yeah.
My background in school, my degree is in broadcast journalism. My minoring in everything in school was in business and business law. So there could
Oh.
have always been a law school possibility, but
Mm-hmm.
we had kids very young. We were raising our two kids, from our mid to late 20s. So, we had our children very young. So it's kind of tough when you're raising a family
Oh,
to,
yeah.
to start looking in a different direction. And so every time somebody would call me, a friend from the business, they would say, I have something I think you might be interested. I would go, sure, let's do it. And that just kept building and
Yeah.
building. So there were a couple of times where I had enough. The business was changing. There weren't as many jobs as there had been when I first came out of school. There were fewer and fewer companies owning more and more radio stations. And they were eliminating jobs because they could go to these services that offered traffic and news and sports and use those services instead of hiring their own people on payroll. So that
Yeah.
changed the business. That got really frustrating for me. But each time something better came along, and I would grab what came along, and that kept me in the business until finally at KYW one day I woke up and said, "Yeah, I think this is it."
Oh, interesting. I want to get back to that,